The giant doors of the Galactic Council chamber opened with a soft whoosh. Ambassador Deho walked inside, his black suit looking plain next to the colorful robes and shining armor of the alien delegates. His footsteps echoed in the massive room as hundreds of eyes, tentacles, and sensor organs turned to watch him. Deho had seen this room many times before, but today felt different. Today, the other species were going to vote on whether humans could serve in the galaxy's military forces. The air felt thick with tension as he took his seat at the small human section. High above in the observation deck, Hye-jin pressed her face against the glass. She wore her military uniform with pride, even though she knew it might be the last time. As the human military attaché, she had spent 5 years working with alien officers. Today, they would decide if her job would exist tomorrow. The council speaker, a tall blue creature with 4 arms, raised one hand for silence. We are here to vote on Resolution 2847X. This resolution will ban all humans from serving in any military position within the Galactic Confederation. A murmur ran through the chamber. Some aliens nodded their heads, while others made strange clicking sounds that meant agreement in their language. The Vexari representative stood up first. The snake-like creature's scales gleamed under the bright lights as it spoke. Humans are too violent, it hissed through its translator device. They fight without honor. They kill without thinking. We cannot trust such primitive beings with the safety of our galaxy. Many aliens made sounds of agreement. Hye-jin felt her hands clench into fists as she listened. Next came the Threnody delegate. The crystal being's body rang like a bell as it spoke, creating beautiful music that the translators turned into words. Humans lack the wisdom for modern warfare. They see enemies everywhere. They cannot understand peaceful solutions. Their minds are too simple for the complex art of civilized conflict. More agreement from the crowd. Deho sat perfectly still, his face showing no emotion. The Luxarian ambassador floated up from his seat, his golden robes flowing around his thin body. I have studied human military history, he said in his high musical voice. They have fought wars on their own planet for thousands of years. They have weapons designed only to kill. They know nothing of honor or mercy in battle. Such creatures have no place in our advanced society. Hye-jin watched as delegate after delegate stood to speak against humans. They called humans bloodthirsty, unstable, and dangerous. They said humans were too aggressive, too violent, too primitive. To understand modern warfare, only a few species spoke in favor of humans. The dog-like canary delegate wagged his tail as he talked about human bravery and loyalty. A few smaller species mentioned how humans had helped them in the past, but their voices were quiet compared to the loud chorus of criticism. Ambassador Deho finally stood when it was his turn to speak. The room fell silent as he walked to the speaker's platform. He was much smaller than most of the alien delegates, but something in his calm manner made them all pay attention. Honored delegates, he began, his voice clear and steady. You speak of human violence as if it is a disease. You fear our military history as if it makes us monsters, but you forget one important thing. He paused, looking around the room. There are worse things in this galaxy than humans, much worse things. And when they come for you, you will wish you had kept us close. The alien delegates laughed. Some made sounds that were like laughter in their species. The Vexari delegate hissed with amusement. Typical human fear-mongering, it said. Always seeing threats that do not exist. Deho nodded slowly. Perhaps you are right. Perhaps there is nothing to fear. I hope you are correct. He returned to his seat without another word. The vote began. Giant screens showed the results as they came in. Species after species voted to ban humans from military service. The numbers climbed higher and higher. 400 against humans, then 500, then 600. Only 12 species voted to keep humans in the military. When the final count appeared on the screen, the result was clear. 847 species voted for the ban. Only 12 voted against it. The resolution had passed by a huge margin. The council speaker announced the result with satisfaction in his voice. Resolution 2847X is approved. All humans will be removed from military positions within 30 galactic standard days. The galaxy will now be protected by civilized species only. Many aliens cheered. Some clapped their hands, tentacles, or claws. Others made happy sounds in their own languages. They acted like they had just won a great victory. Deho stood up calmly and bowed to the assembly. "The Terran Coalition accepts the will of the Council," he said. "We will withdraw our people as requested." He paused for a moment, then added quietly, "We wish you the best of luck." As the session ended and aliens began to leave, talking excitedly about their victory, Deho activated a small device hidden in his jacket. He typed a short-coded message. "Winter Protocol is now in effect." The message was sent through secret channels to Earth where it would reach people who had been waiting for this day. People who had prepared for the possibility that the galaxy might decide it no longer wanted human protection. Up in the observation deck, Hyejin watched the celebrating aliens with sad eyes. She had trained with many of them, fought beside some of them, saved the lives of others. Now they were throwing her people away like garbage. Over the next few weeks, the removal of humans from military positions began. Captain Minho, who had commanded the Joint Species Cruiser Harmony's Edge for 3 years, stood on his bridge one last time. The Luxarian officer who would replace him looked around with obvious disgust. "I cannot believe they let primitives command such an advanced vessel," the Luxarian said as he examined Minho's tactical manuals. "These barbaric strategies have no place in modern warfare." He tossed the manuals into a disposal unit without reading them. Minho watched his life's work disappear into the recycler. "Those manuals might save your life someday," he said quietly. The Luxarian laughed. "I doubt that very much. Goodbye, human. Try not to start any wars on your way home." All across the galaxy, similar scenes played out. Human military advisors were dismissed from their posts. Human officers were replaced by aliens who had never seen real combat. Human tactical databases were deleted as outdated primitive thinking. The aliens celebrated what they called the dawn of enlightened peacekeeping. They believed they had made the galaxy safer by removing the violent humans from positions of power. But in the darkness between the stars, something ancient stirred. Something that had been sleeping for millennia began to wake up. And when it fully awakened, the galaxy would learn why humans had spent so many centuries learning to be good at war. The aliens had gotten exactly what they asked for, a galaxy protected by civilized species only. Soon, they would discover if civilization was enough to keep them safe from the things that lurked in the dark spaces between worlds. Winter was coming, but not in the way they expected. 6 months had passed since humans were banned from military service. The galaxy seemed peaceful. Trade ships moved safely between star systems. The new all-alien defense forces patrolled their sectors with pride. Everything appeared to be working perfectly. So Young bent over her digging tools on the dead planet of Kepler 438b. As a xenoarchaeologist, she studied the remains of ancient civilizations. Since losing her job as a military advisor, she now worked as a civilian contractor for whoever would hire her. The planet was cold and empty. Its 2 suns had died long ago, leaving behind a frozen world covered in ruins. But these ruins were old, older than any civilization the galaxy had ever found. So Young brushed dust away from a stone tablet. The symbols carved into it were unlike anything in the galactic databases. She ran her scanner over the markings and her translation software began working. Slowly, words appeared on her screen. "Beware those who feast on mines," she read aloud. "The devourers sleep beyond the void, but hunger calls them home. When the dark ships rise, only the strong will remain. The weak become vessels for the hungry ones." So Young felt a chill that had nothing to do with the planet's cold air. She kept digging, finding more tablets with similar warnings. Each one spoke of something terrible called the Devourers, creatures that ate not just flesh but thoughts and memories themselves. The tablets described battles fought millions of years ago. Entire civilizations had vanished overnight, leaving behind Empty cities full of people who still breathed but no longer thought. The warning spoke of dark ships that came from the space between galaxies, carrying horrors beyond imagination. So Young packed up her findings and transmitted them to the Galactic Archaeological Council. She marked the report as urgent and requested immediate study of the tablets. Then she waited for a response. The response came 3 days later. Dr. Veltar, the new head of the council, dismissed her findings in a short message. Ms. So Young's interpretation shows typical human paranoia. These tablets likely describe natural disasters or primitive fears, not actual threats. The Archaeological Council finds no cause for concern. So Young stared at the message in disbelief. She had spent 15 years studying dead civilizations. She knew the difference between myth and historical record. These tablets were warnings, not stories. Meanwhile, in the Outer Rim territories, strange reports were coming in. Captain Taman, now working as an independent trader, heard the stories during his stops at space stations. Ships were going missing near the Void Nebula region. At first, the disappearances seemed random. A cargo hauler here, a passenger liner there. The new Galactic Defense Force blamed pirates or equipment failures, but Taman noticed patterns that others missed. He kept a private log of every disappearance. When he mapped them out, they formed a perfect spiral pattern, moving inward, from the galaxy's edge. Each missing ship had sent its last transmission at exactly the same point relative to the nebula, and those transmissions all contained the same strange energy signature, something that matched no known technology. Taman tried to report his findings to the GDF. He sent detailed reports with maps, energy readings, and timeline analysis. The responses he got were always the same. Thank you for your civilian input. The matter is being investigated through proper channels. No investigation ever took place. The alien officers who now ran the defense forces were too busy with their ceremonial duties and political meetings to worry about statistical anomalies in the Outer Rim. On Earth, things were different. In hidden bunkers beneath major cities, humans prepared for something the rest of the galaxy refused to see coming. Defense Minister Yunwoo met with his staff in a secure facility deep under the Pacific Ocean. The winter protocol is working perfectly, reported Colonel Kim, one of Hyunwoo's top advisors. We have successfully removed all traces of our best ships and personnel from official records. As far as the galaxy knows, they never existed. Hyunwoo nodded as he looked at the holographic displays showing Earth's hidden fleets. Hundreds of ships that had been secretly built over decades now waited in concealed bases throughout the solar system. They were crewed by volunteers who had officially died in training accidents or been declared missing in action. What about our intelligence networks? Hyunwoo asked. Still intact, Kim replied. Our people are now working as civilian contractors, traders, and researchers throughout the galaxy. The aliens think they got rid of us, but we're still watching everything. Beneath Luna, in a facility that didn't appear on any official maps, Yoonji worked at her computers. As one of humanity's best strategic minds, she had been tasked with preparing for threats that the Galactic Council refused to acknowledge. Her screens showed data from across the galaxy: trade route disruptions, missing ship reports, energy anomaly, readings, all pieces of a puzzle that the aliens chose not to see. But Yoonji saw the pattern clearly. They're coming, she said to her assistant Wonho. The probe ships are already here, mapping our defenses and testing our responses. Wonho looked at the data displays. The missing ships? Not missing, Yoonji corrected. Taken, studied. The crews are probably still alive, but their minds have been harvested for information. Classic probe behavior. Exactly what the tablets described. She pulled up a tactical projection of the galaxy. Red dots marked each disappearance, forming spiral arms that slowly worked their way toward the core systems. How long do we have? Wonho asked. Yoonji ran calculations on her quantum computer. 6 months until they reach the middle systems, maybe a year before they hit the core worlds. The aliens' enlightened peacekeeping won't last 5 minutes against what's coming. Back on his trading ship, Taemin received an encrypted message through channels he thought had been shut down months ago. The message was simple. Package. Delivery required, coordinates attached, Payment in full upon completion. It was coded language from his old intelligence days. Someone wanted him to transport something important, and they were using the old human spy networks to do it. Tae-min smiled for the first time in months. Maybe his people hadn't forgotten about him after all. The coordinates led him to an abandoned mining station in a dead system. When he arrived, he found So Young waiting for him with a case full of ancient tablets. "I need these to reach Earth," she said as she came aboard his ship. "The Archaeological Council won't listen, but maybe our own people will." "What's so important about old rocks?" Tae-min asked as he helped her secure the case. So Young's face was pale with worry. "They're not just old rocks. They're the last warnings from civilizations that faced something called the Devourers. And according to these tablets, they're coming back." Tae-min felt a cold fear in his stomach. "The missing ships?" "Reconnaissance," So Young said. "They're mapping our defenses, learning our weaknesses, just like they did to the civilizations that wrote these warnings." As Tae-min's ship jumped to hyperspace, heading for Earth with its precious cargo, other reports continued to filter in from across the galaxy. More ships disappeared. More energy anomalies were detected near the Void Nebula. More warnings were ignored by the alien authorities. The Galactic Defense Force continued their patrols, confident in their advanced technology and civilized approach to peacekeeping. They held ceremonies to celebrate their enlightened leadership. They gave speeches about the new age of galactic harmony. None of them noticed the dark shapes moving at the edge of sensor range. None of them detected the probe signals being sent into deep space, carrying detailed information about galactic defenses, fleet positions, and the locations of major population centers. The galaxy slept peacefully, protected by its civilized guardians. But in the darkness between stars, something ancient and hungry was waking up. Something that had been waiting millions of years for the galaxy to forget the lessons written on those stone tablets. The Devourers were coming home, and they were very, very hungry. The first attack came without warning. The Kepler-22 system simply went dark. All communications stopped. All ship transponders vanished from tracking networks. 12 billion lives disappeared from the galactic census in less than 6 hours. Admiral Kolthar of the Vexari Defense Fleet received the alert at 0347 Galactic Standard Time. The Serpentine officer slithered to his command center aboard the flagship Righteous Harmony. His scaled hands moved across the control panels as he tried to understand what had happened. "Send a probe to Kepler-22, he ordered his communications officer. "We need to know what caused the system blackout." The probe launched immediately, its faster-than-light engines carrying it toward the dead system. It would take 3 hours to reach Kepler-22 and send back data. Kolthar settled into wait, assuming they were dealing with a solar storm or equipment failure. The probe's first transmission made every officer on the bridge freeze in horror. The system's star still burned normally. The planets were intact. But every space station, every orbital facility, every ship was empty. They drifted through space like ghost vessels, their crews gone. "Send a boarding party," Kolthar commanded. "Find out where everyone went." The boarding team consisted of 12 Vexari Marines, the finest warriors in their fleet. They approached the largest space station with weapons ready, expecting to find pirates or saboteurs. What they found was far worse. The station was full of people. Humans, aliens, even some Vexari, all sitting at their posts, all breathing normally. But when the Marines tried to communicate with them, no one responded. The crew members stared straight ahead with empty eyes, their minds completely gone. "They're alive," reported Sergeant Thexia over the comm. "But it's like looking at empty shells. There's nothing behind their eyes." Kolthar felt his scales ripple with fear. "Bring them back for medical examination. Maybe it's some kind of disease." But before the boarding party could return, something else appeared on the sensors. Dark shapes emerged from the space between galaxies, ships unlike anything in the galactic databases. They were organic-looking, as if they had been grown rather than built, and they moved with purpose toward the next star system. The Galactic Defense Force mobilized immediately. This was their chance to prove that civilized warfare could handle any threat. The Threnody Harmony fleet was the first to engage the unknown vessels. Commander Lindar, a crystalline being whose body rang like bells when she spoke, led 50 of the most advanced ships in the galaxy. The Threnody believed in ceremonial combat, warfare as an art form. They began their attack with traditional honor songs, broadcasting their intentions to the enemy. Unknown vessels, you have entered Galactic Confederation space without permission. Lindar's voice echoed musically across all frequencies. We offer you the chance to withdraw peacefully. If you refuse, we will engage you according to the ancient codes of honorable warfare. The response came not in words, but in action. The dark ships suddenly accelerated, moving faster than should have been possible. They struck the Threnody formation like a plague, releasing clouds of nanobots that seemed to eat through shields and hull plating alike. Lindar watched in horror as her ships were consumed from the inside out. The nanobots didn't just destroy the vessels, they harvested the crew's minds, leaving behind empty bodies that continued to work at their stations even as their ships fell apart around them. All ships, emergency retreat, Lindar commanded. But it was too late. The dark ships had learned the Threnody communication frequencies and were now broadcasting the same honor songs back at them, turned into weapons that shattered the crystalline beings' bodies with their own harmonics. Within 2 hours, the entire Threnody Harmony fleet was gone. Not destroyed, converted. The ships now moved with the Dark Fleet, their crews still at their posts but no longer thinking, no longer alive in any meaningful way. News of the disaster spread quickly through galactic communications networks. The Luxarian High Command decided to try a different approach. They would use superior technology and careful strategy to defeat these mysterious invaders. Commander Wu Jin led the Luxarian Response Fleet. His ships were equipped with the most advanced weapons in the galaxy, energy disruptors that could tear apart matter at the quantum level. Surely no organic technology could stand against such sophisticated firepower. The battle took place near the Centauri cluster. Wu Jin's ships formed perfect mathematical formations, their attacks coordinated by quantum computers that calculated optimal firing solutions. For a moment, it seemed like their strategy was working. The dark ships took heavy damage from the energy weapons. But then something terrible happened. The enemy vessels began to adapt in real time. Their organic hulls shifted and changed, developing immunity to each type of weapon after only minutes of exposure. Within an hour, the Luxarians' quantum disruptors were completely useless. Worse, the dark ships started copying the Luxarian technology. They grew new weapons that looked exactly like the energy disruptors, but somehow made them more efficient, more deadly. They turned the galaxy's own advanced technology against its creators. Wu Jin found himself watching his fleet get systematically destroyed by weapons based on his own designs. As his flagship Golden Wisdom was boarded by creatures that looked like nightmares, he sent one final desperate transmission. "This is Commander Wu Jin to any human vessels in range," he broadcast, on old emergency frequencies. We were wrong. We need help. Please, if any humans are listening, we need..." The transmission cut off as nanobots swarmed the bridge. Wu Jin's crew stopped moving, stopped thinking, but their eyes remained open as the creatures that had once been their allies began operating their stations. The pattern repeated across the galaxy. The Canary tried using pack tactics and were overwhelmed by creatures that could coordinate better than any wolf pack. The Zephyrians attempted to use their psychic powers and found their minds being eaten from the inside out. Every strategy, every weapon, every clever tactic that the civilized species tried was quickly absorbed and improved by the enemy. The things that attacked them, the Devourers, as ancient tablets had called them, didn't just fight their enemies. They learned from them, adapted to them, and then became better versions of them. Meanwhile, on Earth, the emergency channels crackled with desperate messages from across the galaxy. Human intelligence officers working undercover as civilian contractors sent coded reports about the disasters unfolding in space. Defense Minister Haiyun Wu read the reports with growing alarm. The descriptions matched perfectly with the warnings from So Young's ancient tablets. The Devourers had returned, just as the dead civilizations had tried to warn them. "Sir," Colonel Kim entered the briefing room with urgent news. We're receiving direct pleas for help from the Galactic Defense Force. They're offering to lift the ban on human military service immediately. Hyunwoo looked at the holographic display showing the advancing enemy forces. Dark ships were spreading through the galaxy like an infection, converting everything they touched. The civilized species' enlightened warfare had lasted exactly as long as the humans had predicted. Not at all. Send them our response, Hyunwoo said quietly. What should I tell them? Nothing. Send them nothing at all. Kim looked confused. Sir, surely we should. Should what? Hyunwoo interrupted. Rush to save the people who threw us away when they decided we were too violent for their peaceful galaxy? They wanted civilized protectors. They got them. Now they can see how well civilization works against things that want to eat their minds. In her hidden facility beneath Luna, Yoonji monitored the galaxy-wide communications. Desperate alien voices filled the emergency channels, begging for human help, promising anything if humans would just respond to their calls. She listened to their panic with cold satisfaction. These were the same voices that had called humans primitive and violent just months ago. Now they sounded like frightened children crying for their parents. Should we respond to any of the distress calls? Wonho asked. Yoonji shook her head. Not yet. They need to understand the full cost of their decision. They wanted to be protected by civilized species only. Let them try that for a while longer. The war continued to spread. System after system fell to the devourers. The enemy grew stronger with each victory, adding captured ships and converted crews to their forces. They learned every defense, adapted to every weapon, and turned every strength into a weakness. The aliens' sophisticated technology became tools for their own destruction. Their careful strategies became roadmaps for more efficient conquest. Their civilized approach to warfare became a guarantee of their defeat. But somewhere in the darkness between Earth and the advancing enemy, other ships were moving. Ships that didn't appear on any official registry. Ships crewed by people who were supposed to be dead. Ships carrying weapons that the civilized galaxy had banned as too terrible to use. The ghosts of humanity's military were stirring. And when they finally revealed themselves, the galaxy would remember why some species were very, very good at a job that civilization had forgotten how to do. The job of killing things that needed to die. The Devourer fleet moved toward the galaxy's core like a dark tide. Behind them, entire sectors lay empty. Not destroyed, but converted. Billions of creatures that had once been alive now served as hollow puppets, their minds consumed, but their bodies still functioning. On Nexus Prime, the Galactic Council met in emergency session for the 15th time in 2 weeks. The massive chamber that had once been filled with proud delegates now held only frightened survivors. Half the member species had already fallen to the advancing enemy. Council Speaker Morthak, his blue skin pale with fear, called the session to order. We must discuss our final defense options, he announced to the remaining delegates. The enemy will reach the core systems within days. Ambassador Daeho sat in the same chair he had occupied months ago when the council voted to ban humans from military service. He had said nothing during any of the emergency sessions, just watched as his former colleagues grew more desperate with each passing day. We need to contact Earth again, insisted the surviving Vexari representative, her scales dulled with stress. The humans must help us. They have to help us. They haven't responded to any of our messages, replied the Canary delegate, his tail tucked between his legs. 47 official requests for aid, and complete silence from Earth. Daeho finally spoke up. Perhaps they didn't hear you. Every eye in the chamber turned to him. The Luxarian ambassador, one of the few survivors from his species, leaned forward eagerly. Ambassador Daeho, surely your people won't abandon the galaxy in its darkest hour. Daeho's expression didn't change. My people were abandoned first. You voted us out of your military, remember? You said we were too violent, too primitive for civilized warfare. That was a mistake. The council speaker's voice cracked with desperation. We see that now. We were wrong about everything. Please, contact your government. Ask them to reconsider. I already have, Daeho said calmly. They're considering it. Hope flickered across the alien faces. And their decision? They said no. The chamber fell silent except for the sound of frightened breathing from a dozen different species. The Threnody delegate, one of only 3, survivors from her crystalline race, made a sound like breaking glass. But why? She whispered. We're all going to die. Deho stood up slowly. Yes, you probably are. And when you do, you'll finally understand what we tried to tell you months ago. What do you mean? The council speaker demanded. There are worse things in this universe than humans, Deho said quietly. Much worse things. You chose to face them without us. Good luck with that. He began to walk toward the exit, his footsteps echoing in the vast chamber. Behind him, alien voices rose in panic, calling for him to stop, begging him to reconsider. Deho paused at the doorway and looked back one final time. You wanted enlightened peacekeepers to protect your galaxy. Congratulations, you got exactly what you asked for. The chamber doors closed behind him with a soft whisper. Meanwhile, the evacuation of Nexus Prime had begun in earnest. Billions of beings tried to flee deeper into the galaxy's core, hoping to find safety behind more layers of defense. But everyone who understood military strategy knew the truth. There was nowhere to run. The planet's orbital defense platforms, designed by committees to be humane and proportional, had already proven useless against enemies who could adapt to any weapon within hours. The evacuation fleets were protected by ships crewed by officers who had learned warfare from textbooks rather than experience. High above the planet, Commander Wu Jin stood on the bridge of his new flagship, Last Hope. He was one of the few alien officers with actual combat experience, having survived 3 separate encounters with the Devourers by running away as fast as possible. His communications officer looked up from her station with wide, frightened eyes. Sir, we're detecting massive energy signatures at the edge of the system. They're here. Wu Jin felt his golden skin turn pale. Through the bridge's viewing screens, he could see dark shapes emerging from hyperspace. Hundreds of Devourer vessels, many of them twisted versions of ships that had once belonged to the galaxy's proud fleets. All ships, prepare to engage, he ordered, though he knew it was hopeless. Broadcast on all emergency frequencies. If there are any human vessels in range, we need immediate assistance. The response came not from distant Earth, but from much closer. New contacts appeared on the sensors, ships that hadn't been there moments before, ships that seemed to materialize out of empty space like ghosts becoming solid. Sir, the sensor operator's voice shook with confusion. I'm reading human vessel signatures. But that's impossible. All human ships were recalled months ago. Wu Jin stared at his screens in amazement. The new contacts were definitely human designs, but unlike any vessels in the official databases. They were sleek and dark, built for stealth and speed rather than ceremony. And there were so many of them. A communication channel opened, filled, with static and interference that made it almost impossible to trace. A human voice spoke in calm, measured tones. Attention, Galactic Defense Forces. This is Captain Minho of the Terran Shadow Fleet. We're here to clean up your mess. Wu Jin grabbed his communication device. Captain Minho, thank the stars you're here. We thought all human military vessels had been recalled. There was a pause before Minho responded. They were. These ships don't officially exist. Neither do their crews. I don't understand. You don't need to understand. You need to get your ships out of our way. We have work to do. Before Wu Jin could ask what that meant, the human ships moved into action. But they didn't engage the Devourers the way galactic forces had been trying to do. Instead, they did. Something that made every alien officer watch in horror. They targeted the converted ships, vessels that had once belonged to friendly species but now served the enemy. Without warning, without mercy, the human fleet opened fire on ships that still contained the living but empty bodies of their former crews. What are you doing? Wu Jin screamed into his communicator. Those ships still have people on them. Minho's voice came back cold and steady. Those aren't people anymore, they're weapons. And we destroy weapons that threaten us. The human assault was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. While alien fleets had tried to minimize casualties and preserve infrastructure, the humans approached the battle with surgical brutality. They didn't try to capture or convert enemy vessels. They simply destroyed them completely. Bioweapons that had been banned by every galactic treaty turned devourer ships into pools of dissolving organic matter. Reality bombs that could tear holes in space-time itself erased enemy formations from existence. Planet cracker missiles, forbidden for centuries, reduced massive dreadnoughts to clouds of atoms. But the most terrifying thing wasn't the weapons themselves. It was how efficiently the humans used them. Every shot was calculated to cause maximum damage. Every strategy was designed to eliminate threats permanently. There was no mercy, no hesitation, no attempt to find peaceful solutions. The Devourers, who had adapted to every other military strategy they'd encountered, suddenly found themselves facing something they couldn't understand. The humans didn't fight to win battles. They fought to make their enemies extinct. Within hours, the tide of battle began to turn. Devourer ships that had seemed unstoppable were reduced to debris fields. The organic vessels that had grown and adapted so successfully against alien weapons simply dissolved when exposed to humanity's more creative forms of destruction. But the humans weren't finished. As the last Devourer ships fled the Nexus Prime system, human vessels began hunting them down with methodical precision. They followed the enemy's trail back through space, systematically destroying every converted ship, every harvested population, every trace of the infection. On his bridge, Wu Jin watched in amazed horror as humanity's shadow fleet demonstrated what warfare looked like when conducted by a species that had evolved to be excellent at extinction. "This is madness," whispered his communications officer. "They're destroying everything, even the people who might still be saved." Wu Jin shook his head slowly. "No," he said, understanding for the first time what humans had tried to tell the galaxy. "This is what survival looks like when you're fighting something that wants to eat your mind." The human fleet moved through the galaxy like a surgical knife, cutting out the devourer infection with absolute precision. They showed no emotion, made no speeches, offered no mercy to their enemies or their enemies' victims. They simply did what needed to be done to keep their species alive. And across the galaxy, the civilized races finally began to understand why. Some beings were very, very good at a job that civilization had forgotten existed, the job of being monsters when monsters were what the universe required. The final battle took place in Earth's solar system. The massive Devourer mothership, a living planet covered in dark organic towers, had followed the fleeing remnants of its fleet to humanity's home. It hung in space beyond Pluto's orbit like a cancerous moon pulsing with malevolent life. Admiral Taemin stood on the bridge of the stealth dreadnought Silent Fury, watching the alien monstrosity through his ship's sensors. Around him, the largest human fleet ever assembled waited in the darkness between worlds. These were ships that had never appeared in any official records, crewed by people who had been declared dead years ago. "Target analysis complete," reported his tactical officer, a woman named Ji-Hai who had officially died in a training accident 5 years earlier. "The mothership contains approximately 4 billion harvested minds from across the galaxy. All major Devourer leadership entities appear to be aboard." Taemin nodded grimly. The creature they faced wasn't just a ship. It was a living archive of every civilization the Devourers had consumed. Inside its organic walls, the empty shells of countless species served their new masters, while their stolen memories fueled the enemy's intelligence. "Any signs of the local fleet?" Taemin asked. "The Galactic Defense Force is maintaining position near Mars," Ji-Hai replied. "Commander Wu Jin is requesting permission to assist in the battle." Through his ship's communication system, Taemin could hear Wu Jin's desperate voice broadcast on open channels. "Human fleet, this is GDF Command. We want to help. We know. We failed before, but we're ready to fight alongside you now." Taemin considered the offer for a moment, then opened a response channel. "Commander Wu Jin, your ships use weapons designed to minimize casualties and preserve enemy assets for capture. Is that correct?" "Yes. but we can modify our approach. Then, stay where you are. Taemin cut him off. This battle requires weapons your civilized minds couldn't imagine using. The human fleet began its approach to the mothership, but they didn't charge in with guns blazing like heroes in stories. Instead, they moved with the cold efficiency of exterminators approaching a nest of dangerous insects. The first wave of weapons wasn't even visible to normal sensors. Nanobots designed to consume organic matter at the molecular level were fired from torpedo tubes, spreading through space like invisible clouds of death. When they reached the mothership, they began eating away at its hull from the inside out. The Devourer vessel responded by releasing its own nanobots, improved versions copied from earlier battles. But the humans had expected this. The second wave of weapons was quantum viruses that turned the enemy's own nanobots against their creators. From his position near Mars, Commander Wu Jin watched the battle through long-range sensors. What he saw made his golden skin turn pale with horror. The human weapons weren't just destructive, they were designed to cause maximum suffering to the enemy. Bioweapons that could rewrite DNA in real time turned the mothership's organic walls into dissolving acid. Psychic scramblers that had been banned for centuries attacked the harvested minds inside, freeing them from slavery, but destroying their personalities in the process. "This is monstrous," whispered Wu Jin's communications officer. "They're torturing the enemy to death." Wu Jin shook his head slowly. "No," he said, finally understanding something humans had tried to tell the galaxy long ago. "They're making sure it can never happen again." The human fleet pressed its attack with surgical precision. Every weapon was carefully chosen not just to destroy the enemy, but to prevent any possibility of survival or escape. Reality bombs tore holes in space-time around the mothership, making it impossible for any part of it to flee to other dimensions. Planet Cracker, missiles, each one powerful enough to shatter worlds, struck the creature's core systems. But even these terrible weapons were just the beginning. The humans had brought something far worse. Captain Minho, commanding the heavy destroyer Final Answer, transmitted the authorization codes for humanity's most forbidden weapon. Deep inside the ship's secure vault, automated systems began arming, a device that had never been tested in battle. "Entropy torpedo armed and ready," reported his weapons officer. Minho took a deep breath. The entropy torpedo was a weapon so terrible that its very existence violated the laws of physics in several different ways. It would not just destroy the target, it would erase it from reality itself, making it so that the target had never existed at all. "Fire," he ordered. The torpedo moved through space faster than light, faster than thought. When it struck the Devourer mothership, the effect was immediate and complete. The massive creature simply vanished along with all the harvested minds it contained. Not destroyed, deleted from the universe as if it had never been there at all. The sudden silence after the explosion was deafening. Across the solar system, every sensor screen showed empty space where the enemy had been. The threat that had consumed entire civilizations was simply gone. In the aftermath of the battle, the surviving Galactic Defense Force ships approached the human fleet cautiously. Commander Wu Jin requested permission to come aboard Admiral Taemin's flagship. Two officers met in the Silent Fury's briefing room. Wu Jin looked around nervously at the human ship's austere interior. No decorations, no ceremonial elements, just efficient military design focused entirely on the business of war. "How?" Wu Jin asked simply. "How did you do what we couldn't?" Taemin poured 2 cups of coffee and offered one to his guest. "You fought them the way civilized beings fight each other. We fought them the way apex predators eliminate threats to their territory. But the weapons you used, they're forbidden by every galactic treaty." "Exactly," Taemin replied calmly. "You created those treaties because you were afraid of what we might do with such weapons. You were right to be afraid." Wu Jin took a sip of the bitter coffee and grimaced. "And the entropy torpedo? I've never seen anything like it in any database." "Because it's not in any database. We built it specifically for enemies like the Devourers. Threats so dangerous that their complete elimination from reality is the only acceptable outcome. That's... Woojin struggled for words. That's horrifying. Taemin nodded. Yes, it is. That's why we exist. Someone has to be willing to do horrifying things, when the alternative is extinction. Over the following weeks, the human fleet methodically hunted down every trace of the devourer infection throughout the galaxy. They showed no mercy to converted populations, no hesitation about destroying ships that might contain salvageable crew members. When they found a space station filled with empty-eyed survivors, they didn't try to cure them or rehabilitate them. They simply vaporized the entire facility, reasoning that the risk of infection spreading was too great. When they discovered a planet where the entire population had been mentally harvested but their bodies left alive, they didn't attempt a rescue mission. They used orbital bombardment to sterilize the world, ensuring that no trace of the enemy's influence could survive. To the civilized species watching from a distance, the human methods seemed barbaric and cruel. But the results spoke for themselves. Within 3 months, every trace of the devourer threat had been completely eliminated from the galaxy. The final human ship to return to Earth was the Silent Fury. As Admiral Taemin walked through the corridors of his vessel, he passed crew members who had sacrificed their official identities to serve in humanity's ghost fleet. They had spent years preparing for a threat that most of the galaxy refused to believe existed. In her facility beneath Luna, Yoonji received the final reports from across the galaxy. Every devourer vessel destroyed, every infected population eliminated, every trace of the enemy's presence erased from existence. Mission accomplished, she said quietly to her assistant, Won-ho. The galaxy is safe. At what cost? Won-ho asked, looking at the casualty reports. Billions of beings had died during the cleanup operations. Yoonji's expression didn't change. At exactly the cost we told them it would require. They chose to face this threat without us. We chose to face it our way. When the Galactic Council reconvened on Nexus Prime, the atmosphere in the chamber was very different from months before. The few surviving species looked at Ambassador Daeho with a mixture of gratitude and terror. The council speaker, his blue skin marked with scars from the recent battles, called the session to order. We are here to formally lift Resolution 2847X and restore human participation in galactic military affairs. Daeho stood up slowly. The Terran coalition appreciates the gesture, but we must respectfully decline. Shocked murmurs filled the chamber. But why? Demanded the surviving Vixari representative. You saved us all. We saved ourselves, Daeho corrected. The galaxy was simply in the way of threats to our survival. Surely you'll help us rebuild our defenses. Daeho shook his head. You made your choice when you decided our methods were too violent for your civilized galaxy. That choice has consequences. He paused, looking around the nearly empty chamber. But don't worry, we'll be watching. And if something like this happens again, we'll deal with it the same way we always have. Which is? Daeho's smile was cold and sharp. Whatever it takes to keep our species alive. As the session ended and the surviving delegates filed out in worried silence, Daeho remained in his seat.